Guys. Cruizer, why don't you start us off today?
Good evening, Brony!
That is exactly what I wanted. Thank you so very much. Welcome, everybody, to another Brony Debates Live. I hope you are all doing well tonight. Sorry for the little bit of a delay here, but we're still on a pretty good time track. So let me give you a little backstory here. A few weeks ago, Cruizer here had the suggestion of why don't we discuss the pros and cons of dragon culture within Friendship is Magic. And I thought that was a very interesting topic because dragon culture has been rather difficult to even pin down in the first place. So we got a relatively small panel tonight. It's just myself, Cruizer. How are you doing tonight, Cruizer?
Just drove 2 hours just to get to Bronny's place here.
Yeah.
And, literally, I just ran right in through the door, folks.
Oh, man, I should have had a drink for you set aside here. I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry, we'll take care of it later.
Yep, and we also have Invisibrony joining us tonight. He's a really good voice actor, and he had some stuff to say about this topic as well. So, Invisibrony, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Brony and Cruizer.
Yep. So
Happy to be here.
It's great to have you. So real quick, let me give a shout out to my very generous supporters on Patreon who make these streams possible, as well as my continued content creation. If all goes well, we'll have a new episode of A Buck to the Face out next week, before the end of the month here. Especially those girls and guys on the $10 and up tier, such as Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Sodden, Girder, Senko, Jennan, Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, Stephen A. Wilson, Reck, Rein-Kun, Princess Sunshine Sparkle, Bootleg Bard, The Silly Fox, Zoroark 720, and the Equestrian City Heroverse series. That list has gotten 3 names longer since last week. And I'm very happy about that, but also it's harder to read now.
You should just you should really just turn it into
a
Yep.
You should really just turn a song into it.
I should. Maybe I'll get the tune for Yakko's
I was actually thinking that
countries of the world,
Yeah.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti,
Jamaica,
Jamaica, but like finding the beat for this is gonna be tough.
Ministries.
Yeah, it's gonna be something. But something else is we need to get that list long enough that it takes up the whole song, like the whole 2.5 minutes.
And hopefully by then you can actually go look. If you want to hear the names, just click this link.
Oh, that would be cheating though. Anyway, and it changes all the time too. But I'm dwelling on this way too much. We're gonna talk about dragon culture. So, Cruizer, I would like you to define our terms. So you've recently gone back through Friendship is Magic and watched like all of the dragon themed episodes, right?
That is correct. But the one that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to point to is Spike's Dragon Code. Now, I have rewatched that episode, and I'm not so sure if we can use this as a proper outline, because one thing that a lot of people I don't think a lot of people realize is that Spike says in the episode that is his personal dragon code. So, and because Spike, was not aware of dragon culture at the time, at least not as much, because he did have that one dragon migration episode. I'm not sure if that's really a good outline to start with.
It may or it may not be. So yeah, personal. It kind of had to be his personal dragon code because he hadn't really had very much interaction with dragons outside of dragon migration up until then. Like, I don't even think he did. He went on that mountain climbing trip for Dragonshy. But between so I've got some questions about that. But before we do that, so why don't you run us down your list of things you noticed about dragon culture?
Okay, the one thing that I've noticed is that they tend to have this, I guess you could say, warrior mentality, or at least trying to raise a badass. Pardon my language there. Basically, because I noticed that with the relationship between with Ember and her brother Smolder, they all try to come off as tough as possible. Even in the the Gauntlet of Fire episode. Every single one of these guys are basically roughhouses. They like to, rough around. That's their way of having fun. They swim in lava. And this is just what they do. And even to the point where if you saw Ember's little Christmas story and their little episode there, you notice that it's a pretty sad story, but they just enjoy seeing weak things getting pummeled.
Yeah, that's exactly what Smolder said. She was like, "Yeah, we like it when you try to be nice to somebody and it bites you in the butt."
Yeah, pretty much. So
you meant Garble, right?
You said Ember and her brother Smolder. So it was Garble and Smolder that were siblings. Ember, as far as what I know, doesn't.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But we're semantics. I was gonna let that one slide.
So what are the pros of that, and what are the cons of that?
That's the question. So, what do we've got here? We've got a warlike, a culture, I guess. Now, there seemed to have been some discrepancies between, Dragon Shy and Dragon Quest, where the dragons were all loners, and then every so often, I think they said once every century, they would all get together and meet up somewhere. And then we didn't really get another dragon episode until Gauntlet of Fire.
Mm-hmm. And we learned that there is, I guess you could say, a hierarchy amongst the dragons, because we do have a dragon lord. But we also know that their size also kind of depends on I believe what Smolder said was greed-induced bigness. So does the bigger the dragon mean that you're going to be, the better chances of you becoming a dragon lord? Do they see wealth as someone who's going to fit as their leader?
I don't, I'm not sure about that. I scratch my head about Gauntlet of Fire all the time because it just seems so contradictory.
How so?
Having that hierarchy is almost contradictory. Maybe not even almost contradictory. It just seems to fly right in the face of the loner dragon that we had seen in Owl's Well That Ends Well and Dragon Shy, and even Spike at Your Service to a degree. And then Dragon Quest, and they had the migration. And when we saw the migration, they didn't really do much. They got together and they played and they fought and tried to assert dominance. But what happens after the migration? Do they just go their separate ways again? And then they got the Dragon Lands, so they do congregate or they don't congregate.
Well, normally, whenever people say the word migration, they at least we'll say, for example, within birds, that usually means they're flying south for the winter. It's getting too cold for them.
Uh-huh.
So I think in the terms of the dragon migration, I think you can chop it up to pretty much the same thing. It's basically just them trying to get away from the cold.
Alrighty then. So, Invisibrony, we've been kind of talking here. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this before we move on?
Yeah, sure. Like you said, it might seem a little contradictory to have a dragon lord for what's, in some ways posited as a loner culture where, my horde, I'm going to go take my horde into a cave and live by myself so no one can take my gems and stuff. But at the same time, there's obviously Torch must have a big horde of his own because he's the biggest dragon I've ever seen in the show. So he's clearly got a little wealth stashed away somewhere. But also at the same time, it's like a pack mentality. They're pack animals, so they might not always be together, but having someone in charge so that you're not just always fighting each other and killing each other and whatnot. Plus, later on in one of the episodes, I forget which one it is, but it's the one where Smolder goes home to see her brother Garble, and they're talking about their family dynamics, and they actually do have that. Even in the Christmas episodes, the hearthwarming episodes, they talk about what they did for quote unquote hearthwarming in the Dragonlands, where they tell terrible stories about things they've done to other people.
I think also though, nothing has really up until Dragon or the Gauntlet of Fire. Dragon culture hasn't really been that well established. It's been hinted at, but nothing was ever really set in stone. There's definitely, say for example, that one dragon in Dragon Shy who broke away and was hoarding all of his gems in Equestria, but
And he was freaking huge.
He was.
Yeah, he could be an exception.
Yeah, maybe he was the exception.
And then there was that green dragon from All's Well That Ends Well, and that guy was as big, it looked like. Maybe even bigger.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, All's Well That Ends Well, that was the one where Spike got jealous of Alisia's.
Yeah, I remember the episode. I just don't recall another dragon.
He ran away into the Everfree Forest and he happened upon this cave full of big gems. And he started eating them.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And all of a sudden here's this giant green dragon, like, what are you? And he literally sounds like, why are you eating my gems? And then they chase him, and Owlicious kicks the crap out of this giant dragon.
I think for that you can say that perhaps maybe, for lack of a better word, friendship wasn't really established within dragons at the time. Mm-hmm. And when the Gauntlet of Fire and the show progressed, that's when they started to introduce, proper relations with other creatures and other dragons into their culture.
Yeah, and with the migration episode, when Twilight's doing all that research and he's like, no books, there's no info, I can't find anything, and for whatever reason, she doesn't talk to Celestia. The pony's been around forever. And then when they get to the Gauntlet of Fire, all of a sudden Luna and Celestia are like, well, we know exactly what this is. It's the Dragon Lord calling you. You have to go see him to stop it.
Yeah, and I'm usually the first one to find a way that could work, but that was, I can't find a way that can work. I'm pretty sure that's just somebody wasn't paying attention to the show Bible.
I think in that particular episode, they just said little is known about dragon culture.
Yeah, but they knew that, and that's a very specific and intimate thing.
Yeah, but if they haven't seen it, though, for years on end...
Yeah. I mean, she has been alive for 1,000 years, so, she's old. She may have seen it and just forgotten about it. Right. That's the best I can do.
So, with all that being said, I think we've got our terms defined here. So, since this is Cruizer's topic, I would like to hear from him first. And so what we'll do is Cruizer, why don't you tell us some of what you believe are positive aspects of dragon culture, and then if Invisibrony or I disagree with you, we'll argue about it from there for a few minutes. So what do you think?
Okay, I do think there are a lot of positives to be gained from this culture. For one thing, you're definitely raising someone to not be a weakling. All you have to do is just flip on the news and you can just see people's feelings getting hurt and what they will do because of that. And we even said this in the Buck to the Face of Legend of Everfree episode, where we all said, you need to toughen up. When we said that to Twilight. And
yeah.
I do think there is I essentially believe that's what dragons are trying to do with baby dragons, essentially. They're trying to teach them how to toughen up, how to be able to take a punch, how to be able to handle other dragons, because they do come from a ruthless culture.
All right. There's one positive aspect. Invisibrony, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's essentially a bully culture. They're all bullies, and so that's what they're used to, and that's the mentality of the group is that I was bullied, so I'm going to bully you, and then you're going to bully your kids and your kids' friends, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's a pro in the fact that it can toughen them up, but it's a really negative overall attitude.
And I'm going to add on to what Invisibrony just said, because Cruizer, you said something about you turn on the news and you see all the liberal snowflakes getting their feelings hurt, but what do they do as a result of that? We see it on the news. They start rioting. Like what we saw a couple of years ago at that college in Portland, Oregon, or what even we're seeing now in Portland, Oregon. A lot of those guys are what that would fall into the mold of what you would just describe. Regardless of whether or not the audience or myself or anybody agrees or disagrees with you. If you get your these are people, they get their feelings hurt and they've got this sensitive, this sensitive mindset, but it's just sensitive in a different way. So you call me an idiot, now we got to fight. Now somebody's getting hurt. And that happens, we've got a lot of cultures in the modern day that are like that too, and then somebody gets killed over something stupid. So what do you say to that?
Well, for one thing, when it comes to the dragons, This is one of the reasons why I wouldn't say it's a bully culture, because while they may be ruffians, or how Rarity describes it, they never did anything as bad as start a riot. They always kind of kept it amongst themselves.
Oh, except for Garble, who threatened to burn Equestria to the ground. If he became Dragon Lord, he was going to burn Equestria and take everything he wanted.
And there was also that one guy who wanted to pillage them for all their pillows.
Yep, true.
So,
and then there was that chick who wanted to make
burps a greeting.
Yeah. How dare you step on my line? So it can vary. But what I'm saying is something like that can very easily go to an extreme, and because we see it in history too. There's been quite a few.
Spanish Inquisition.
Well, I wouldn't have said that, but I was gonna say like a lot of European cultures and a lot of the Mesoamerican cultures, if you insulted somebody, it could very easily mean a fight to the death. And some people say, oh, they were stronger back then, and they were more polite back then, because if you didn't, you had to be ready to fight to the death. Which I think, all things considered, we live in a much more peaceful time now, where it's like, yeah, if you insult somebody, you're a jerk, but nobody's going to take a rapier through the chest for it. So,
I don't think the dragons would either. At least to others, people who are not dragons. I mean, despite what Garble said, he's basically just a teenager.
All right. So Invisibrony, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, well, we could rename it the pros and cons of Karen culture.
I think a dragon and a Karen are two separate things for the most part. Now a dragon and a Karen certainly wouldn't get along. I'll give you that much. So can either of you add or take away from anything that we've said so far?
I will say that it's definitely a teetering scale, I guess is the phrase, because they're definitely ruffians amongst themselves, but they don't seem to realize that this is not how everyone else functions.
Sure. And also, sorry, go ahead.
And just that if you're not careful, it will turn into that slippery slope.
Right. And also, it also demonstrates that, not all dragons are identical. While they all come from a similar culture, like we were saying, stealing pillows, belching, and raising Equestria to the ground, clearly individuals have their own goals and mentalities and personalities.
And that's why Spike wanted Ember to be the new Dragon Lord. He figured if he can, just win her over, she would at least not want to pillage Equestria, regardless if it's for pillows or destroying.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. So what other pros do we have for dragon culture?
You can let's see. Yeah. The warrior mentality is definitely a big one. That's just something that I really think a lot of people need to learn. And not even, just like a battle-hardened warrior. Just be able to just realize when someone's a jerk and just walk away. But I'd say toughness is really the main one that I noticed. But a big con, however, is the fact that they don't seem to realize that you don't have to do that. You don't have to, they don't even have a sensitive side, I guess you could say. That's definitely a big con.
Well, they do, but they repress it. At least we saw that with Spike himself, with Ember, with Garble.
And even Smolder.
Yeah.
No, pretty dresses.
Yeah, I mean, she, you could say that she was starting to kind of embrace like her feminine side, or just the fact that she likes cute, silly stuff. But definitely, they don't really know. They feel pressure to not release that to the public, at least to their peers.
Well, yeah, because it's frowned on in that culture. So is that I'm a little confused here, because I was still asking about pros. Is that a pro?
No, well, to an extent, you could say, because even in within our own Brony community, there are some things you don't want to let out, or maybe you should not share with people. However, there's also a con side of it where you're not being true to yourself.
And that's certainly a balancing act to itself. That kind of thing in life, more plays down to an understanding of appropriate time and place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you know you're like that. I don't wear like my shining armor shirt out in public.
You have one?
Exactly. It's in coincidentally, it's in the wash right now. But
he does have an Applejack shirt. I gave him one, folks.
Yeah, you've only ever seen me wear that at Brony meetups.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some merch that I can sort of get away with, like that one. But the point is, I don't like wear Dr. Hooves or a Rainbow Dash shirt or something like that out in public because, yeah, some people do still look down on Brony fandom. Nerds and fandoms are a little bit more acceptable nowadays than they used to be. You see people walking around with like superheroes or Legend of Zelda or maybe even the occasional Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
But even in Brony heyday in like 2012 to 2014, you almost never saw a pony shirt out in public.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more about understanding an appropriate time and place. But the problem with the Dragons is that they never had an appropriate time and place until season 9, when it was like, hey, these things that you look down on, that you believe are not dragon traits, which the more I think about it, could very easily just be translated to masculine traits, traditionally masculine traits. They can have these things that are not traditionally masculine traits can have their practical applications, and I'm sure there's a lot more of you out there that are repressing them as they are. So if that's it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There is another pro, and then it does involve going back to the Gauntlet of Fire, and the fact that is, for one thing, their leadership, or at least kind of depending on who, is determining the next Lord or Dragon Lord or leader, is rather reasonable. It's basically a physical competition, and that definitely seems pretty fair. Whoever is the strongest is the one who is going to be the next leader, which I do think it does take a strong leader to lead, and not only that, but the Dragon Lord had to learn that it also takes a lot of brains. He learned that from his daughter. So I do think they actually have a fair way of determining who can be a leader.
Now, on that note, however, Ember technically didn't win the challenge. I mean, her and Spike kind of did it together, but in the end, Spike's the one who had it, and he gave it up.
Well, I believe Ember was actually trying to take care of Garble, and she said, you go get it now.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, it was a combined effort. So again, that could play to her being smart, maybe knowing that Spike, although she acted surprised, maybe thought that he wouldn't want to be the Dragon Lord, that he knew it wasn't his role.
And it seems like I just had it.
And it's gone.
So that might, because being strong doesn't necessarily make you a good leader. Strength is often a factor in being a good leader, but those terms are not synonymous by any means. There's plenty of very strong people out there that are horrible leaders because they don't have other qualities that might make a leader. Like, you need a balance of sympathy, and occasionally you'll need to have a little bit of callousness. Because you're going to need that callousness in order to make sacrifices in a leadership position, but you'll also need the sympathy to understand how the people that you're leading are feeling when it's applicable to solving a problem, whatever you're working on together. I got to speak in very broad and vague terms here because leadership applies to a great many things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're Dragon Lord, you just tell them how they're feeling. Be amused!
Exactly. And that is, so even then, the episode flies in the face of what dragon culture it supposedly is, and says, this actually isn't a good thing because the strongest didn't win. They won through friendship.
No, but it does show that anybody can win.
So how does that help? How is that a pro for dragon culture?
Well, maybe they'll stop killing baby phoenixes.
Maybe.
But
maybe.
well, it kind of goes back to what to something here in our world. Like we used to say, anybody can become president. Well, you can make the case here, that case for the dragon culture, that anybody can be a leader.
Right. Well, if you want to go by that rule, that like in America, if you're born in America, you can be president, but if you're born outside the country, you're not eligible. So technically, if you went by that, Spike could not become the Dragon Lord by that rule, because he was not born in the Dragonlands.
But I don't think that translates well to
no,
because the Dragon Lord, he was like, yeah, whatever, go for it, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have cultures in history that said, okay, the strongest will take over for me. The two in my head are Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah, so both of those guys were amazing conquerors, never lost in battle. Arguably, died before their time. Did a lot of bad, but a lot of, and then later down in the future, a lot of good came out of all the bad that they did. But both of them, their last words were, my kingdom will go to the strongest. Well, now there's a power vacuum and a power grab, and everybody thinks they're the strongest, and they're gonna, and even if they're not the strongest, they're gonna be using underhanded methods. And then what always happens is that the whole thing tears itself to shreds.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
that's how it goes.
So that's not a very good way to run things either.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's not. But I'm just saying that anybody could be the next Dragon Lord. They did not. You just had to be a dragon. They did not. They did not discriminate when it came to that.
Yeah, that can be a pro or a con in itself, because you can have anybody can be president in America, but how many Roosevelts are you going to get, or John F. Kennedys are you going to get? How many Lincolns are you going to get, or how many George Bushes are you going to get?
As long as you don't get any AOCs.
How many Jacksons are you going to get? How many Jimmy Carters and Barack Obamas are you going to get? It could go in either direction, is what I'm saying.
No, but if you definitely work at it, you can be it.
Yeah. But what I was saying is, regardless of whether or not you can achieve that, doesn't necessarily make it a good thing. So that's all I have to say about the pros that you've listed for me so far. Invisibrony, do you have anything you'd like to add or take away from what we're saying?
No, you pretty much covered what I had in my mind there for that section.
All right, so now that let's move on. It's about time we move on to the cons. So what do you think is a bad aspect of dragon culture?
Everything else.
Everything. Okay, so could you be a little more specific and give me some examples?
Okay.
And if you say any of them, I'm going to hit you with a chair.
Okay. Sure. The fact that they are, they do kind of have like this warrior mentality. They are ruffians. However, that they don't seem to realize that not everyone else in the world is.
Right, but they believe their way is the best way. So how is that? What kind of problems does that cause for us?
Well, instant war with the Yaks, because Yak's way is best.
And that was actually in the comics. They had a couple of comics about that.
And we actually almost kind of saw that with School Days when with Chancellor Naysay. We almost had that.
Oh, Naysay.
So basically, I guess the con here is that they are uncultured.
Maybe uncultured, but it's more of a very confident
machismo.
It's a very confident way of knowing that of being assured of yourself. And if you're assured of yourself, you spend a lot less time second guessing yourself, and life becomes a lot easier to figure out. With what you're saying there, that warrior mentality, well, that means this is the position I'm in, so I need to make myself stronger in order to better my own situation, which I think is a pro in its own way. So, Cruiser, what do you think about that? So now you've told me all your pros, and I've said no, those are bad, and now you're telling me the cons, and I say no, those are good. So what do you think?
Well, it almost cost them a bunch of baby dragons for one.
That might have been more so of negligence, because if I remember correctly, those Garble and his friends were just surfing around. They were redirecting lava flows that was supposed to go to the nursery, and but was unaware of that. And when they learned about that, they felt kind of bad about it. Unless I'm misremembering that episode, can anybody help me out here?
That sounds about right. But the fact that they just have such a lack of concern for,
or actually lack of knowledge of how the babies are born. Like where's the person who should have been like looking after those eggs and telling people like, hey, you know, make sure the lava stays flowing to the hatchery or we're all gonna die out. Like, where the heck was that person?
Ember
didn't know what the problem was. So
that's even worse. The leader had no idea what was going on. That's bad. Yeah. So there's clearly a lack of knowledge, of teaching, of knowledge. Yeah, there's being, you know, Torch should have passed this information down to her or someone. There should have been, you know, a shaman for the dragon tribe.
If Torch knew himself, I'd be very surprised. Cruiser, what do you going to
say? Basically what Paladin Pony there just said, a big con is they don't think. They definitely have this, you know, act now, think later, and I
have no arguments there.
Yeah,
like I can't.
No planning.
Yeah, it's one thing to be strong. It's one thing to be confident. And you can go a long way with that. But if you don't use your freaking brain, it's only going to be a matter of time until you run into a brick wall that's harder than your own head.
Yes, that's definitely a con there, is that they don't plan. They don't have a future plan other than get stronger, act decisively.
Yeah.
And another con was the one that I brought up earlier, that you could see it as either or, is the fact that they're not really allowed to embrace their silly side or their feminine side. That's always been frowned upon, and when you're not allowed to do that, it can have some bad consequences.
Oh yeah, if you well, here's the thing: is even though typically in Western culture we see these traits as masculine and feminine, and when I say those two words, almost everybody knows exactly which traits go to which group that I'm talking about. But the truth is that most people have a mixture of both. So I don't believe those are gendered traits as much as they are human traits, and certain genders might be a little bit more likely to exhibit one trait over the other. But even then, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I think it's more hard and soft or sensitive sides to that type of thing. And
so basically, they don't know how to embrace their sensitive side.
Right. So I was, you know, I that was a very long-winded way of defining my terms here. But what I'm getting at is that when you suppress a whole entire half of your personality, it's gonna bubble. It's gonna
do some psychological damage.
Bubble up, yeah, kind of like what we saw in All Bottled Up with Starlight. And how infuriated Trixie was. She just literally took her anger and bottled it up, and then it exploded. It exploded in a very unhealthy way that hurt a lot of people around her.
Innocent people.
Yeah, and herself included, which is a very good parallel to what happens in real life. So that that is certainly a con, and it happened in the dragon culture too. But they sort of had a more systematic way of dealing with it, whereas like in pony culture, your sensitive side is a lot more encouraged, maybe even so to an unbalanced degree where it can have the opposite problems. And
right,
but in dragon culture, it's I'm not supposed to enjoy these things, so I must enjoy them in secret, if at all, and and I will release my frustrations by bullying other people.
Yeah, basically that right there boils down to what dragon culture is and how it became that. Is like we can't do the things that we secretly like doing. So I'm going to go and be aggressive at you and you, and that's kind of actually like, if you want to go by dragon culture from the Gauntlet of Fire era, because obviously once Ember became Dragon Lord, I'm assuming dragon culture at least changed a bit. Mm-hmm. Obviously not overnight or entirely, but there definitely had to have been changes.
Right. So, Invisibrony, after Cruiser gave what he believed was a con, and I said, oh, that can actually be a pro, did you have anything you wanted to add or take away from that?
Unfortunately, not particularly, because everything you were saying were things that I was thinking. But I'm kind of on both your sides here. Like, there is obviously a pro and a con to what we're talking about here. Is it's a pro that they can have strength in having a strong leader, but at the same time it creates a very toxic culture when you can't express your more sensitive side. Mm-hmm. So
it seems
that's where we land.
It seems like basically all of dragon culture is just teetering on good and bad.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing for pony culture too, but on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah, they're not aggressive enough sometimes, and that leads to them getting their butts kicked.
Right. So did you have any other cons for us that you can name?
Well, a big part of me wants to kind of dive into greed-induced bigness, but there's just not a lot to be said about it. We only saw it in one episode, and it was brought up in the molting episode. I mean, that definitely seems like a con, but what else can you really say about it?
It's part of dragon physiology,
Yeah.
It would be. It's just a part of dragon life of being a dragon. It would be like trying to tell a tadpole to not grow legs, or a caterpillar to not grow wings.
Well, considering how very little we saw those huge dragons, is it possible that they actually know how to control their greed?
Possible, but now we're getting into headcanon territory, which is not a territory that I like to play in. What do you think, Invisibrony?
Yeah, well, like you were saying, it would make sense because in the episode where Spike becomes super greedy and acquires all that, he grew really huge, really fast because he just lost his mind. So obviously, it's a physiological thing. But if that was something that happened to every dragon all the time, and I think the reason it would happen to him is because he didn't grow up in dragon culture. He never had the opportunity to be immunized to that, or at least acclimatized. Sorry, is the word I was looking for. And so, he just went off the deep end and then pulled it back. And so that's what I was going to ask you. For spoilers for the latter seasons, he does appear a bit bigger. So I guess maybe he's finally learned how to do that. And that's a kind of a neat thing too, because as a pro for their culture, having that ability, if they ever ended up, being invaded or attacked, they could just, berserker rage gem hoarding, and then all these big fighting dragons are ready to go to war. So that's a big pro in that side. The con being they may never come back from that if they go off the deep end, go crazy, and there's nothing to pull them back. They could just rampage and destroy the world.
You know something, Invisibrony, here? You're reminding me of a story I heard a long time ago, and the story was about elephants in a zoo, and I forget exactly which zoo it was, but they would breed these elephants, trying to get the numbers back up. I think with the idea of getting them back out into the wild, so that they can come off the endangered species list. I think that's what it was. Please keep in mind it's been a while. If someone corrects me, I fully admit. But anyway, the point is they would have these baby elephants, but they would not have any bull elephants in there. So the baby elephants were just being raised by their mothers. Well, once the baby elephants reach adolescence, the hormones start kicking in and they become very aggressive. And they were hurting all the other elephants, and they wouldn't let their trainers get near them, and so it was very difficult to feed them. And they were like, "Why is this happening?" Well, as it turned out, that male and female elephants raise a young together, and that when the baby elephant
aggressiveness,
when that aggressiveness starts coming out, the adult
Daddy lays a smackdown.
Yeah, pretty much. The adult male is there to discipline and teach the baby elephant better before it's big enough to hurt another elephant. And that was being used in the context at the time of showing that humans are very much the same way, that we ideally need a responsible biological father as well as a responsible biological mother as part of the family unit to raise a well-rounded child. And obviously in humans there's exceptions to that. Some people are just not fit to be parents, but that's, neither here nor there at the moment. That was the context in the moment, but yes, that can be applied to humans. And what you're saying there, if that's true, can be applied to dragons as well. So what do you two guys think about this very long-winded analogy of mine?
Well, if you remember during the in the molting episode, it seems like whenever anybody goes through that, they kick them right out of the house.
Well, yeah, because they smell so bad.
So do you.
Yeah. I'm not mad because you said it. I'm mad because you beat me to it.
I'm sorry, folks. I could not help it. When I see an opening line, I have to take it.
Yeah, that was like one of those Rocky things where we both went for the hook at the same time, but you just got it first.
Yay! I won one.
Yep. All right. So,
but anyway, so if that's the case, I mean, because we don't even know much about dragon parents, do they eventually let their kid back in, or do they just kind of wander on their own for the rest of their life?
Oh gosh!
And if that's the case, and that means the dad or whoever the parents are.
Well, not much is known about dragon culture.
Right. So
yeah,
that's interesting because I'm trying to remember now if they had said anything about that.
Yeah, I mean it's clear though that Smolder and Garble definitely kept in touch. That's obvious.
Yeah. But it also doesn't mean that Garble went back into the family home after the molting. That could be the time to get your own apartment phase of life.
Yeah, it could be. What do you think, Cruiser?
I just said.
Yeah.
It's Invisibrony's turn.
Mm-hmm.
But I just said.
No.
You were helping. That would definitely be. Again, you could look at it as a pro side of that would be, it's a time for you to earn your independence, learn how to live on your own, stop mooching off our food. Be your own dragon. And as a con, well, your family's kicking you out of the house and saying goodbye to you. That kind of sucks. So that could also
can be, especially if you're not ready for it.
Yeah, it could definitely contribute to that aggressive bully mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Just I got kicked out, so I'm gonna go and take out my frustrations on someone else again.
Yeah, especially if you don't know how to. So like if we go back to Dragon Quest for a second here, it almost sounds like if we put the later seasons of Dragon episodes together with the earlier seasons of Dragon episodes, it's looking like, they kick you out the house, and then you've got to go and make your own way. You got to make your own way in the world, and if all you know is bullying, it's kind of like that elephant analogy we were talking about earlier, where there's nobody to really check you. And at that point, it just is going to come down to whoever is the biggest and the strongest physically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like there's stuff. Now, granted, you can say there's flaws with everything, but still, it just seems like there's not that much love, care, or concern within dragon culture.
Yeah.
No, basically, unless you're like, I guess, even a family member. I'm pretty sure it would have to be a family member, like hurt and dying, that the dragon might be like, oh, my brother's laying dying on the ground. But if they just saw, like, say, some random dragon they didn't know get smacked in the head by a rock and fall over, would they stop and help? Would they care at all?
Probably not Season 2 dragon. Season 9 dragon, probably.
Yeah, that's the culture change I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, because it seems like most of them probably wouldn't, but there might be a few exceptions.
Yeah. And they might not even do it for altruistic reasons. They might be thinking, hey, I could get a reward for saving this guy.
And but also let us not forget, I know some people kind of, disagree whether or not the comics are canon, but there was an issue where we did see dragons living in the city.
Yeah, Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia had a dragon district.
Yeah, and it was apparently the rough side of town. And yeah,
Wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah, you could say that. And that probably just goes back to, their culture and perhaps like, okay, maybe this isn't the best thing for us, guys.
Yeah, they could have been the punk movement of dragons. They're rebelling against their parents. I don't want to live in the caves no more. I'm going to go live in the city and show my parents that.
I just remembered the episode Father Knows Beast, though.
Oh, right!
Yeah.
That kind of throws a lot out the window.
I'm surprised we've gone 45 minutes without talking about this
Father
episode.
Knows Beast?
That was the one where that guy came in.
Claimed he was Spike's father?
Claimed he was Spike's father, and just is like, hey, you're going to wait on me hand and foot. That's the dragon thing to do. And then when they find out, hey, he's not really your father, he goes, any dragon would have done what I did. So what does that say about dragon culture?
Honestly, I don't think it says much about dragon culture as it does him. Because
he was a fat, small slob. Like, he was short. He was not much taller than Twilight, and he's supposedly a full-grown adult dragon.
Yeah, I think that's more about him than it does so much culture, because he could have just been saying that to save his own ass.
Yeah, he's a con man, so obviously, he could just blame it on dragon culture to take the responsibility off of himself, and it's like, I was just doing it to get by and get mine.
Yeah, and even Smolder says something about, dragons are, this, that, and the other, but they're not blank. I can't remember what it was she said.
Gosh darn it, none of us are prepared for today's episode.
Well, the thing is, I did take notes, but I went through my note app on my phone to find it, but it turns out it's the note app on my computer, which is still in my car.
That's why you gotta use Google Docs. Alright. So, with all that out of the way, unless Invisibrony wants to chime in anything, do you have anything else you want to say?
Sorry, you talking to Cruiser or me?
You.
Oh, no, I think we've covered pretty much a lot of what the culture is, and could be in future. Hopefully, once down the line.
And we've got some ideas on what aspects of it we can take away and apply to life, and as well as some pitfalls to watch out for the con side of it. So now let's get into my favorite part of the show, with the audience interaction section. So I've been watching the stream and reading the chat as we've been going through here, and writing down any interesting comments or questions. And now I'm going to read those off, and we'll see how many of them we can get through. If you have any more, feel free. In the meantime, feel free to ask your questions or say your comments now, and hopefully we'll have time to get to them.
The only thing I'm just going to say is by the time all this ends, I will leave a comment telling you what Smolder said about dragons are not blank.
Right.
So that will be up.
And I'll pin that comment to the.
Okay.
So it's the first thing everybody sees. Anybody.
Oh, also, I have the quote for you if you'd like it, Brony.
Oh, okay.
Sludge just lays around while you wait on him claw and tail. Dragons are rude and rebellious, but they aren't lazy lumps who take advantage of their kids.
Alrighty then.
Okay, so we know they at least have some love, care, or concern for their children.
Yeah.
Or at least they won't screw them over actively.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Badre Bally says, I really dislike Dragon Quest. I think Twilight acknowledging the Dragon Code is because complained of how dragons were portrayed in Dragon Quest. Okay, so if there's some bad grammar there. But if I'm understanding this correctly, he's saying that Twilight acknowledging the fact that there was a Dragon Code was because not a lot of people liked Dragon Quest, and they were trying to make up for it in a meta sense. What do we think about that?
Well, I'm a little surprised about that, because everyone I've ever spoke to loved Dragon Quest.
Yep.
I was kind of indifferent about it. I thought it was an okay episode, and it did open up a lot about the dragons. I just wasn't that into the episode on a personal level.
I like the underrated characters, so I was always excited to get episodes about Spike, and I always wanted more episodes about Celestia and Sombra and Applejack,
That's what the comics are for, and he's fallen behind.
Cheerily, Zecora. We needed more Zecora. Let's see here. Badre Bally also said, I hear people compare dragon culture in the show to the culture of the ancient Spartans.
That actually sounds very accurate.
Yeah, you think so? How so?
Because basically they had the same idea. It was basically a warrior mentality. It was a warrior culture. And matter of fact, one of the more darker things about it is that once a baby was born, they would look at it, think if they would judge it to see if it would become a worthy Spartan, and if it didn't, they chucked it off a cliff.
Yeah, and then they sent it out into the wilderness when it was, of age to go try and survive, like 8 or something like that. I can't remember what age it was, but really young.
Yeah, I think it was 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they sent him out to go fight wolves with a stick. Like, go have fun.
Yep.
So
go play fetch with the wolves.
So I would say that comment is pretty accurate.
All right. Yeah, I'll buy that then.
Yeah.
It's just something I've never actively thought about. Let's see where I see a lot of the similarities between humanity and pony culture character archetypes is just that in personality. I never saw it so much in culture as a whole. Let me see if I can pronounce his name correctly. Matthias Unidostris says dragon culture actually would work really well in reality, but in Equestria it's inferior to pony culture. So we gave some examples of how that probably isn't true. And personally, I prefer pony culture. I think it facilitates peace and communication a lot more. But like if ever there was a time of war for whatever reason, dragon culture would certainly come to the prevalence, because you got to drop down to the baser survival instincts where something like a dragon culture that is warlike and it focuses on the strong and the survival of the fittest is going to thrive.
There's definitely less distance for them to travel on that scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's clear I've seen lots of fans say this about the show, that just how weak Celestia is, or the fact that they're not prepared should something really bad happen, just how worthless their guards are. That there is some truth to this.
Oh yeah,
they're clearly not prepared for war, we'll say.
Yeah, they definitely have the best intentions, or they expect everyone to act like they do and approach in friendship, not with a handshake, not a gun.
Yep. All right, so let's see here. Paladin Pony T says, do you think we have little dragon lore in Friendship is Magic because dragons are too big in the fantasy world? So dragons in Friendship is Magic didn't get a lot of development because dragons are so prevalent in fantasy fiction as a whole. Do we agree?
I mean, I think it could contribute to part of it. I think the main reason there wasn't a lot of development on dragons is because it's a show about ponies, not a show about dragons. And that's, in terms of story, that's where that boils down to. But at the same time, there's a lot is known about dragons, and they clearly kind of pushed the tropes in that direction of dragons being greedy, hoarding, aggressive monsters.
What do you think, Cruizer?
I do think from a writing aspect, yes, I believe that's the case. And also what Invisibrony just said, that was mostly a show about ponies, so that's what they're going to keep the focus on. I also know that, according to Big Jim Miller, he did some sort of a Q&A on Twitter and said there was a lot of stuff they would have liked to have gone into more detail with, but the higher-ups said, no, we got to keep it on these characters.
Yeah, they should have done a spin-off show called My Little Dragons.
I'd have watched it. Same universe, probably would have been forced to be a little more action-based, which is going to sucker me in.
Get cameos from the cast.
Yeah,
Yep.
And Matthias also had a comment on that, where dragons have they live on rocks and lava. Like there is no farmateching. Try to read 2 words about farming, architecture, agriculture, that kind of stuff. Like they don't have an infrastructure. They are migratory beasts. They live off the land, and I guess they eat what they find. And that's about it. Like they don't have the advantages that pony culture did of building an infrastructure and having that ready for the next generation to come along and take over and improve upon. They kind of baselined and leveled out, and that's where they're at.
Right. So let's see here. Toad256 says, speaking of comparing, how about comparing the dragons to the yaks? So,
ooh, that's a good one.
Yak's best.
It kind of is. They do have a lot of similar traits.
They're both hard-headed.
Yeah, they're both hard-headed. They're both egotistical, warlike, very confident in themselves.
It seems like the only real difference aside from the species is the fact one prefers cold, the other prefers heat.
Yeah. Although, to be fair to the Yaks, theirs is more of an outward thing about that. Like in the episode where Pinky Beast is their ambassador, she goes up, and at the end he's like, yes, you understand that we need your help, but we don't want to ask for it. You should just give it to us. Like, if you're our friend, you would just help us. We shouldn't need to ask you. Mm-hmm. You just show up and you help like you did. So good job.
Whereas a dragon would probably just take whatever it is they felt they needed.
Yeah, and they would probably feel insulted if someone thought you were weak. They would think you're weak and you need help, and then if you help them even without asking, not that they would probably ever ask for it. Oh, if they were asking for help, it would be a trick, like with Garble in Gauntlet of Fire. As soon as that rock was off, he's like, "Sucker."
Yeah, and and if you're weak, they're gonna pick on you a lot more.
And I think it's also safe to say that, and we kind of touched upon this before, their lack of intelligence, because if you remember also in the Gauntlet of Fire, Boulder sits on that rock, it sinks in, and he doesn't seem to notice.
Yeah, and the giant eye holes in it. No one notices the giant eye holes. So yeah, clearly the dragons aren't all there upstairs.
Yeah, they got the bronze, no pun intended, but they don't have the brains.
I have the bronze and the brains. I am the best of both worlds.
He just doesn't have the tan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brawny is best. Take that, you frickin' yaks. Okay, so last but not least here, we've got our friend Pony Cordero, who's doing his best impression of a bridge troll, but I feel like we should read these comments anyway. He says, none of you are dragons, so it's racist for you to talk about dragon culture. And I don't know if he misspelled racist intentionally, but he spelled it RAYCIST. Well, that joke's on you. I'm trans species. I identify as a dragon. Get on my level, you privileged piece of crap. I don't know.
You privileged pony.
Yeah.
I identify as an attack breezy.
What do you think? Is it racist for us to be talking about dragons?
It would be racist for us to make judgment on it. However, to discuss the impressions of it is a different story.
You don't have to shut up just because we're the wrong race. We did not invent it, okay?
Tell me, why is it that dragons make up 12% of the culture but commit 56% of the crimes?
Because their culture sucks.
Oh man, we're gonna.
It's not their fault, man. They were just written that way.
I'm gonna catch.
That was brilliant, sir.
I'm going to catch so much flack for that joke I just made. Oh god. All right. He also says all these millennial dragons live in their parents' cave until they're well into their 300s.
Also, actually, one thing we didn't mention earlier, and I just finally remembered that Spike was found as an egg, and no one thought to take him back to the dragons. They just like, I'll give him to my student as a pet.
They would have any pony that goes up to a dragon and isn't Flash Magnus is going to get barbecued instantly. That's probably why.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I just always found that kind of odd. Like Spike's like basically given to somebody. Like, sure, let's give him to a pony. Why not?
Yeah, like here, Twilight, you're a mother at age 6.
Yeah.
Bootleg Bard says, I will have to counter that. Ember has shown great intelligence as a leader, especially considering she had a heart-to-heart with Thorax.
Like we said, she's the exception.
Yeah, she's the catalyst for change in the culture. She's the turning point.
Pony Cordero says, when will Spike transition into an interesting character?
Oh, you son of a...
And he also says, why is Spike weak in the Dragon Ball Z universe? He doesn't have enough Dragon Balls. Thank you for covering me off for that. You would have blown out my microphone if you didn't.
You damn troll.
Yeah. Pony Cordero's a good friend of ours in real life. We went to Gatorland with him last weekend. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you should have pushed him in.
Oh, jeez.
That would have been a snap decision.
Yeah, and then with that, I think we're good for tonight. So does anybody? Do either of you have anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
Just that to keep an eye on both my channels, both Cruizer Brony and the Concert Cruiser. I have more content for both channels coming up, and just keep Pony going.
Yeah, and Invisibrony is a really talented voice actor as well. In case you guys didn't know, at the end of the last episode of A Buck to the Face, we met a character called Wholegrain, and he's voicing that character for me and doing a really good job of it.
Yeah, how about you actually give us a sample of some of your voices there, dude?
Oh, geez, putting me on the spot there. Well, I guess I could start with Wholegrain.
Sure, please.
I was not prepared for this. Sorry. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to open up some of his line there.
All right. Okay, if you got something now, go for it.
Oh, well, maybe I could just talk like this. You know, Wholegrain's he's a Scottish pony. He's a fighter. He's a teacher, and he's going to smack this wee Brony buck upside his head till he learns how to act properly.
Yep. So be sure to check out these guys' channels. And with that, let's wrap this up. I hope you all learn something, about what you can take away from dragon culture, how you can be more dragon-like without losing your pony side. And so if you would like to get on this show, I would love to have you. We just need to get you onto my Discord server, which is a benefit of being a patron for as little as $1 a month. After that, like I said, you get into the Discord server where you can make suggestions for topics, as well as get on the rotation to be on Friday Night Fights. I'm extremely grateful to all of my generous supporters on Patreon, especially those on the $10 and up tier. Get ready for this big long list. Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Sodden, Girder, Senko, Jennan, Kellogg, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, Stephen A. Wilson, Reck, Rein-Kun, Princess Sunshine Sparkle, Bootleg Bard, who I just saw in the chat, The Silly Fox, Zorro Arc 720, and the Equestrian City Heroverse series. Most of those guys have their own content that they make, and it's pretty good, so go and check them out.
And I can actually say that list faster than you with 1 second.
Yeah, okay, you're a goofball. So go check them out. All their links are in the description. And if you want to hang out with me some more, tomorrow night I'll be on Princess Heather Blossom's Chaos and Crocheting stream at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And next Friday is Friday Night Fights at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you all there. And be sure to stay safe and have a great night. And hopefully you enjoyed tonight's show. Thanks again for coming out. Say goodnight, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.